Today I'm talking about the number one sign that you can actually afford a home. And it's not your credit score or the size of your down payment or even the pre-approval letter. That just means that you qualify. So the real signs that I'm covering aren't like the obvious ones, because here's what nobody tells you. Getting approved for a home and actually being able to afford it are two completely different things. And every single month, people who look great on paper still buy the house anyways. And then 6 months later, they're skipping dinners out, they're stressed about the payment, and then they become house poor. And getting out of this mistake can be very costly because there's no like Amazon home return QR code. And I know this because I'm a mortgage expert who's helped over 500 families buy in every kind of market. So the number one sign has a few components that tell the truth before you ever sign. And they're not what the lender thinks you can handle, it's what you can actually afford. And the last thing I'm gonna cover is a bonus that you can run on yourself before you ever buy a home. So I'm gonna teach you a framework I use to help my clients so they can find how much they can afford. It's called the Affordability Spectrum. And before we go over that, we have to first understand some foundational things, which is what I call debt to income. And this is like the golden ratio that lenders care about. They try to calculate how much debt you have divided by the income that you have. Usually that's before taxes. So this is what the affordability spectrum is all gonna be based on. So I'll give you an easy example. I'm just gonna use 100,000 because it's a simple number. You take 100 grand divided by 12, that's 8,300 a month or 8,333. Now let's say you have $400 for a car payment and $100 of minimum credit cards. So that's actually what lenders look at, is the minimum payment for credit cards. And then student loans, let's say it's $100. So if you have student loans right now and they're deferred, you wanna do either a 0.5% of the loan balance, and that's your monthly payment, or 1% of the loan balance. It depends on the program that you get. So you add up all the debts, right? And that's gonna be 400 plus 100 plus 100, so that's $600 a month in debt. You take $600 divided by 8,333, and that's gonna be your debt to income before you get a mortgage. Now, let's say you get a mortgage of $2,400 a month. 2,400 plus 600 is 3,000 a month divided by 8,300, and that's 36% debt to income, or DTI. Now, for conventional loans, you can go all the way up to 50%. For an FHA, you can go all the way up to 56.99. That's with, they call it the back end debt to income, which includes all your debts and the mortgage divided by your income. And for a VA loan, there's not really a debt to income rule. So I've seen anything from 60 to 70% of your income, which is crazy to say, but you can technically do it for a VA loan. Now, am I saying that you need to buy at that purchase price based on that debt to income? Absolutely not. That's like the ceiling or the maximum if you want to think about that, right? But I wanted to teach the foundation before we jump into the number one side. So I want you to notice two things that I mentioned is the lenders will use before tax income, not after tax income. So in the affordability spectrum that I'm going to show you, a way that you can adapt it based on your risk level, okay? And then number two is DTI just tells the lender a ratio or percentage. It's not going to tell you what your life will feel like at that payment. So think of it almost as like knowing how much your car can tow, but not actually how it feels like when you're driving it under load, okay? So that's what I'm gonna cover as the bonus content. So let me show you the spectrum that tells you what this actually feels like. Okay, so let's actually get to the good stuff. So how do you figure out what's actually comfortable for your life when it comes to housing payment? So that's where I use the affordability spectrum. It's basically the 3 S's. So you've got save more. That's gonna be 20 to 30% of your income going to housing and debt. Then you've got the sweet spot, which is 30 to 37% of your income going to debts, right? Then you've got the stretch zone, which is 37 to 50%. So here's the main goal though, okay? So if you can land in the save more and the sweet spot zone, then you're rock solid. That's the number one sign, and you'll be able to afford that home. Now, here's what I love about this framework. Before you put in the comments, is it before taxes or after taxes? You can actually tailor it to your specific needs and your risk tolerance. Remember, life does not live in a vacuum. There's always random things that pop up. With my 8-week-old son, random stuff pops up, right? He's crying a little bit in the other room, right? So random things pops up. People are in different stages of their life, right? And they have different goals. Now, what I love is that you can run your numbers using either before tax income or after tax income. Think of it almost as like getting ice cream, right? And you're trying to choose between, hey, do I want, the cup, it's a little healthier, which is the after taxes, and then, or the cone, which is, before taxes. So here's how I would pick which one's best for you. If you are more risk adverse, if you're the type who wants to, sleep good at night, use the after tax income. Okay. So that's the safe way. I'm not trying to risk it for the biscuits. So this is the getting the ice cream in a cup. So you're not trying to add those, extra calories before you're trying to get, fit before the summer or something like that, right? But if you're not as risk averse and maybe you want to enjoy life a little bit more right now, there's no right or wrong, right? Use the before tax income, the number on your pay stub before Uncle Sam, takes his cut. So this is like getting the cone, right? This is where if you're wanting to buy a home more for personal reasons than the financial reasons, then I would use the before tax income, method. And the cool thing too, again, before you put it in the comments, is you can choose to still go for the cone, but get a healthier ice cream, right? So you can still go before tax income, but remember, let's pull up the affordability spectrum here, right over here. The save more, sweet spot, and then the stretch zone, right? So you can still go before tax income, but then go for the save more zone, right? 20 to 30% of your before tax income. Remember, when you're buying a home, there are two parts of the equation. There's the financial side, which I'm gonna put over here. That's like the net income, right? When you're just looking at the numbers, you want to be conservative. You're trying to get fit for the summer. Therefore, you're going to put the ice cream in a cup. And then there's the personal side, which I'm going to put over here, where you're getting, the ice cream cone, you're using before tax income, and you see this home more than just a place to live. It's like a place that you can call your own. You can customize it and make it the way that you want to, because obviously if you're renting, you don't want to renovate the place because then the landlord gets the benefit and your rent. So it's like a double whammy, right? So yeah, that's how I would look at it. Now, I'll give you a little personal story here, okay? So when I first bought my first house, right? Crazy to think, over 10 years ago. So I ran mine before tax income because I literally couldn't afford anything else. So I was before tax income on the stretch zone. So let's pull up the affordability spectrum again. I was on the stretch zone right over here, and I was using before taxes. So I was going highest is highest, right? So that was on paper. But here's what the paper didn't show is I actually had roommates. It was a 4-bedroom, in Florida. And I actually rented out all the other rooms. So they actually helped, subsidize my mortgage payment. So once we included that, I went from the stretch zone to the, save more zone, right? But on paper, like I said, from the lender's perspective, I was in the stretch zone. Now, 10 years have gone by, income has grown, more experience with rental properties. So understanding risk is the alpha or the benefit now that I've paid down that ignorance debt of, hey, don't make these first-time investor mistakes or first-time home buyer mistakes. That's actually why I love making these videos. So that way you can pay down the debt of the unknown, right? So like I said, totally different zone now. So it's not like you're going to choose one zone and just stay there forever. If you end up being in the stretch zone, hopefully you'll end up more in transition to the sweet spot and then to the save more as time goes on. Okay, so now we know the zones and the payment ranges, but we all know buying a home is a huge commitment. So is there a way that we can test drive before buying a home? Just like how you can get a free samples for ice cream, right? So I know all this talk about food is making me hungry too, but I promise it'll all make sense. And real quick, if you're stuck wondering, am I ready to buy a home or not? That's actually why I built the free homebuyer readiness quiz. It takes less than 30 seconds and there's no credit pull at all. And the cool thing is, if you have a constraint in the home buying process, I send you a specific video to solve that. So that way you can move on to the next part, because the most prepared buyers get the best deals. Also, a little spoiler here. I'm going to be talking about the homeownership free trial, which is a little bonus guide that you get when you complete the quiz, but more on that on the next section. And then right below that, you'll also see a guidance link. So that's if you want more of a custom one-on-one plan and you want me to personally help you, walk you through what I would advise on. And maybe I can be your mortgage advisor. So check that link out if you're interested. So let's be honest, buying a home is one of the biggest commitments of your life, like I mentioned, right? And you're making it based on a bunch of math on the screen. So here's the question I really want you to answer today. Is there a way to test drive owning a home without actually buying one first? I mean, think about it. Spotify gives you a free trial before you pay. You walk into the ice cream shop. And by the way, I'm for sure going to get some ice cream right after this when I'm done with this video, because I'm starving. And they hand you, a little pink spoon to sample before you commit to buying the full scoop, right? I don't know about you, but I'm going to tell you a little secret here is I'm one of those people who tries the free samples, but I don't actually get that flavor. I usually just go cookies and cream. That's my favorite. I don't know if anyone else is like that, but comment down below just so I feel better that I use those free samples just to, scratch my itch for a new flavor, but I always go cookies and cream. So, okay, this is where we're all serious here because mortgages is serious. We never joke. So this is what I call the homeownership free trial. Okay. So first step is you want to find your HPMT or hypothetical monthly payment. You want to do 33% of your income. You can do before or after tax income. Again, do you want the cup or the cone minus your rent? So let's say your rent is $2,200 and let's say your 33% of your income is before taxes is $3,000 for simple math. $3,000 minus 2,200 is $800 a month, right? Number three is transfer that difference, that $800 a month that we just did the math on at the beginning of the month, okay? You want to transfer it to your high yield savings account at the beginning of the month. So you're pretending ideally the same day that your rent goes out. So that way it's almost like you have rent plus and another expense that magically equals your mortgage payment, right? So that's number three. Number four is see if you had enough to pay the bills. If not, you still, guess what? Have the money from step two, your high yield savings account, and then you can transfer that money back and pay the bills. Number five is next month, you want to increase or decrease your HPMT, okay? Not your health points, but your hypothetical monthly payment for any gamers out there. Used to be a big nerd too. So like I said, you want to increase or decrease your hypothetical monthly payment. So if it was 800, maybe try, 1,000 or 1,300. The goal is to find where's that stretch point, kind of like training for a marathon, right? You want to find that stretch point or threshold zone, right? And then run it below that. Okay. So you want to find kind of like that uncomfortable point where like, oh, I barely was able to afford everything. And then you want to decrease and buy below that, right? So you're basically trying to find your ceiling and then buy below that. And that's why I love the homeownership free trial process that I developed is because you can experiment for free for as long as you want. Even if you're not buying for 12 or 18 months, the great news is you can get even more data points, even the longer that you wait, right? All right, real quick, if you're stuck wondering, if you're ready or not to buy a house, that's actually why I built the free homebuyer readiness quiz that I might have mentioned earlier. Like I said, it takes less than 30 seconds and there's no credit pull at all. And it's my free gift to you. So make sure to check it out in the link down below. And also when you actually complete it, I'll actually send you the bonus guide that we're gonna talk about in the next section called the homeownership free trial. So a little teaser there. You'll actually get a copy of it so that way you can follow along. Also, if you wanted more like of a custom one-on-one plan, there's a guidance link down below where I can actually help you, one-on-one and give you more specific advice instead of like the more general. Check it out in the link down below if you're interested. Okay, so here's also a little bonus for anyone who's watching this far along in the video. So it's what I call the surprise expense buffer. So think about over the last year, right? Did you get hit with a surprise expense? Car repair, medical bill, the water heater going down, and then you had to contact your landlord, or if you're a homeowner right now, you've had to cover it, or anything that was like a random expense that was like from $300 to $800 in that range. Now here's the real question: when you saw the bill, did your life stay the same? Like, did you pay it off without having to increase your credit card balances, or if you put it on a credit card that you were able to pay it right away, meaning the credit card balances on average did not creep up, it did not, or you were able to pay for the bill like quite easily, that's really good news. That means you've actually got a buffer. And a buffer is super important because here's the truth about the mortgage. The mortgage is what I call a multiplier. So if you have a $400 surprise that already stresses you out, owning a home doesn't fix that. It doesn't like resolve this $400 magic expense. It multiplies it because now that surprise is a lot bigger because you also have a mortgage tied to it, right? So that water heater is now your water heater multiplied by the stress of having the mortgage, right? So think about it like training for a marathon. You don't run all out sprint at the very beginning. And you also, from a training perspective, you don't run all out sprint 24/7, right? Because you're gonna get injured. As I'm getting older, I have to recover more. But basically when you train, you run a lot more easy miles, or let's call it comfortable miles, I should say. That way you leave some room to pick up the pace when you have these specific training days, etc. So that way you can build more miles. So that way the marathon doesn't feel as hard, right? It's still hard, but not as hard, okay? So same concept with like affording a home is you want to live at a comfortable pace, okay? With enough room in the budget. That way when, life makes you sprint, AKA a surprise bill, a slow month at work, or, whatever, you've got the legs and endurance to run through it, right? Or get to the finish line. So the people who buy right at their, absolute maximum are kind of like redlining or sprinting that marathon, right? You got to understand where your maximum is, but then go right below that into a comfortable range. So like I said, if you can weather the surprise expenses without flinching and you pass the homeownership free trial, in my opinion, you're not just pre-approved on paper, you're actually able to afford a home and you're ready to go. So give yourself a pat on the back because most people can't get to that point. And like always, I hope you enjoyed these YouTube videos. I try my best to make the best videos in the mortgage education space. So if you liked it, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. We're trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So make sure to join the family. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.